Number 5. In 2007, an ad was posted to Craigslist looking for someone with prior experience to babysit a child. A 24-year-old woman named Catherine Olsen applied for this position. Catherine was a struggling actress who worked part-time as a nanny while waiting for a career in theater to take off. The ad was posted by a young man named Michael Anderson, age 19, who said in a later statement that he simply wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. When Michael posted the ad, he took on the alias of a mother named Amy. He and Catherine made arrangements to meet up at his home at 10 a.m. the next morning to start the job. According to Catherine's roommate, Catherine had been getting strange feelings about this job, feeling as though something simply wasn't adding up, though she decided to head to the home regardless. She arrived at the home and was greeted by Michael. He then threatened and lured her up to his bedroom, which was located on the second level of his home. After realizing what was about to transpire, Catherine tried to run, though Michael then shot her in the back, dragged her body down the stairs, placed her in the trunk of his car, and dumped the car a few blocks away. In an attempt to cover up his crime and any trace of Catherine being at his home, he took her phone, which she had apparently dropped, wrapped it in a bloodied towel, and dumped it in a trash can. Though, in a classic turn of events, it turns out that Michael's mother had actually written his name on the towel in permanent marker. The towel was then traced back to him, after which he was arrested and sentenced to life in prison. Number 4. In November of 2013, an ad was posted to Craigslist looking for men who, quote, hated their wives. The ad was posted by an 18-year-old Miranda Barber, who promised any accepted applicants a great night out and agreed to meet up in a public area. However, Miranda had quite the past. According to Miranda, she helped commit her first murder when she was just 13. Apparently, she was the member of a satanic cult in Alaska and was quite well known within her division. Additionally, Miranda was reported to have been addicted to heroin by the time she was 14, before she was ultimately forced by the courts to move in with her uncle, who lived in North Carolina. In North Carolina, Miranda met a man named Elvette, who she eventually married. At some point, the two brought up the idea of killing someone together, believing it would bring them closer together. It was then that Miranda suggested posting a fake ad to Craigslist, to which Elvette agreed. The two selected a victim, Troy LaFera, and agreed to meet on November 11, 2013. According to Miranda, the plan was to get Troy into the car, then stab him to death. To do this, Elvette hid in the back seat of her car, covered up by a blanket. He was to wait until Miranda said the phrase, "Did you see the stars tonight?" After which, he was to immediately jump out and get Troy in a chokehold while Miranda stabbed him. Sadly, the plan worked. The two then took Troy's body and dumped him in an alleyway. Miranda and Elvette then went out for dinner to celebrate, though they were both arrested the following day. While in police custody, Miranda confessed to over 22 murders in 3 separate states. Take a look at this odd interview with Dr. Phil that Miranda's family was a part of. This interview was done back in 2014 and shows Miranda's family almost defending her actions, while seeming to be nearly unaffected by the fact that their loved one turned out to be a serial killer.
Let me ask you.
With me.
Number 3. This next story is more than just disturbing, it's downright repulsive. So if you're squeamish or easily grossed out, you may want to skip ahead. In March of 2015, an ad was posted to Craigslist advertising a bundle of maternity clothes that were to be given away for free. The responders simply had to come to the seller's address and pick them up. A woman by the name of Michelle Wilkins responded to this ad. Michelle was 34 weeks pregnant and in desperate need of new clothing, so she jumped at the opportunity. Michelle drove to the seller's home and was greeted by a woman named Danielle Lane. Michelle was invited inside, where the two women sat down and chatted for over an hour, actually becoming seemingly good friends. Later on, Danielle led Michelle to the back bedroom, where the clothes were supposedly being stored. However, as the two made their way through the house, Danielle attacked Michelle with a lamp, almost knocking her unconscious. Danielle then grabbed a piece of the broken lamp and stabbed Michelle in the neck. At this point, Michelle was barely able to breathe, let alone move, and fell to the ground. Danielle then towered over her with a piece of glass and readied her aim. It was then that Michelle made a last-ditch effort to disarm her attacker, and instead of calling out for help, she uttered, "I love you." Danielle then replied, "If you love me, you'll let me do this." She then took Michelle's unborn baby and left Michelle in the floor to die. However, just moments after Danielle left, Michelle gathered the strength to grab her cell phone and dial 911. Police then arrived and took Michelle to a women's hospital where she was treated for her wounds. She was placed in a room for a brief time, during which she heard a woman down the hallway calling for help, claiming she had just given birth to a stillborn. Michelle thought this was a coincidence at first, though her fears were confirmed moments later. The woman was Danielle and the baby was Michelle's. Danielle was then arrested and sentenced to 48 years in prison, while Michelle made a full recovery. Number 2. Diane Warwick is a Colorado woman whom you likely don't want to mess with. Back in 1988, she was convicted on charges of robbing a pharmacy. Then, just 9 years later, she attempted to rob the members of a drug recovery program, holding the group counselor hostage and spending hours in a shootout with police. Following this, she was ultimately arrested but simply sentenced to 6 years in a mental hospital. Enter Mary Jane Scanlon, an elderly woman from Pleasant Hill, California, who was confined to a wheelchair and in search of a caretaker. After failed attempts to find one on her own, Mary Jane decided to post the ad to Craigslist. As I'm sure you've expected, Diane Warwick was one of the first to respond to this ad, and was quickly hired by Mary Jane. For the next couple weeks, everything proceeded as normal. In fact, Diane was actually a great caretaker. That is, until she came into Mary Jane's home one morning and stabbed her to death in her sleep. According to Diane, she was having hallucinations and thought that Mary Jane was her father. However, her story was not well received by the court, and after a not guilty plea, Diane was sentenced to 31 years in prison for first-degree murder. Number 1. Billy Joe Delacy was a U.S. Army veteran who had previously received 2 war zone deployments. However, this didn't stop him from beating a male escort to death who he claims to have met on Craigslist. At approximately 6 a.m. on August 1st, 2011, Mesa County Sheriff deputies responded to a call-in from someone claiming to have found a body. Once arriving at the scene, police found the body of Luis Oliva, a 26-year-old man. He was naked, lying face-up on a deflated air mattress, surrounded by blood. An autopsy later revealed that Luis had been killed by means of blunt force trauma to the back of the head. Police quickly tracked down Luis's next of kin and were eventually led to Luis's romantic partner, who called Luis his wife. Apparently, the 2 men had become unemployed, so Luis suggested offering sexual services on Craigslist. After hearing of this, police investigated the ad as well as all individuals who responded to it, ultimately leading them to a man named Billy who lived in Colorado. Police arrived at his door, to which Billy admitted to accepting and purchasing the services from Luis, though he denied any further involvement. Following this, police received a call the following day from Delacy's previous girlfriend, who was the mother of his child. Apparently, she was scheduled to pick their son up from school, only to find out that Delacy had already done so, adding that he was scheduled for another deployment fairly soon. Police eventually traced Delacy to a storage unit just a few miles away, where he also stated that he was scheduled to be deployed soon, though it was quickly revealed that he hadn't been in active duty since 2008. Upon further investigation, Delacy was found to have had multiple sexually explicit photos of minors in his possession, as well as emails that placed he and Luis together on the night of Luis's death. A jury found this evidence enough to issue a warrant for Delacy's arrest, where he was ultimately charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and possession of sexually exploitive material. However, all of these charges were later dropped in exchange for a single charge of reckless manslaughter. Delacy was then sentenced to just 10 years in prison. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos.